So this is part two, and I'm going to start it out with one of the things I loved about Gene Sullivan is his humility before a holy God with others by the revelation of the Spirit he shares and shared in his own personal conscience war. He's been willing to feed God's people with understanding the war inside of them because he reveals his own personal testimony of that war of conscience and hearing God's voice and how he woke up to being faithful to the little things. For his testimony has made wise people, simple people wise. His being personal about his own forgiveness, turning at God's reproof, hearing God's voice, and when he's veered off the wrong path and gotten back onto the right one, he has a story to tell. We all should. We should all be soldiers in our conscience war that are talking to each other about the battle and helping each other win the game or the war. As a matter of fact, Gene's ministry, by true understanding, the spiritual understanding of God about the downfall of the hearts of men that are out of order with appetites, passions, emotions, and desires, have been life-changing to anyone who has ears to hear. Had not a man of understanding walked into my life, I can't imagine how my own personal fears with my son would have played out in a horror show due to too much psychology and worldly counseling I participated in. Listening to sound doctrine in a man that understood his soul really helped my brains wrap around who Jesus actually is and was and will be forever and ever. It's like getting to know somebody famous from someone who knows that famous person. So I did this, which took a lot of faith because I had perfected the fine art of sticking my head in the sand before I met him. This is a scripture that says, he that receives a prophet in the name of a prophet, which a prophet is somebody who sees. That's what it means. Shall receive a prophet's reward. And he that receives a righteous man in the name of a righteous shall receive a righteous man's reward. And whoever shall give a drink to one of the little ones, a cold cup of water in the name of a disciple, I say unto you, Jesus said, he shall in no way lose his reward. So receiving him, Gene Sullivan, helped me know Jesus, the conscience cleanser, and how to take a bath, 1 John chapter 1. To also understand the demise of self-righteous sacrifice. But sacrifice and offering could never help clean the inside of anybody's cup, their conscience. So why did they kill Jesus? They didn't want Jesus messing around with their conscience. Why did Caesar shut down Paul? Because he didn't want him to mess with his conscience. People in the world are happy to accuse others in conversations together. They're also happy to excuse each other. They don't want to mess with anybody's conscience, and they don't want anybody messing with theirs. But eventually, those people will secretly or openly end up condemning each other. It's hard to live as a pitiful victim for very long. Not only did Gene Sullivan have a story to tell about the cleansing of his conscience when he first got saved, but he had some pretty deep revelation on how to keep your conscience clean after you get saved. Spiritual indifference is like a really fat sloth not wanting to do anything about his health or her health. You'll reject anybody trying to help you out of that hell of your destructions if you love your destructions. That's why men don't talk, because they don't want to see things the way they are. Jesus said that too. If you just read the red letter edition of the account of Jesus Christ, God came down to the earth in flesh and blood. You will see and understand why he got crucified. He was messing with people's consciences every day, and they were not happy about it. When we really want to stop hiding our darkness, God will be faithful, just like his word says, to bring help from the sanctuary and people for our life. Hiders, lighters, pretenders, accusers, excusers will reject the Father of light for the love of the wrong father, darkness. Men love the power of darkness more than light. They won't come into the light to see things the way they are, Jesus said. So pride deludes them. Lying deludes them. That's one of the deepest sickness of souls. Not the child molestation and the dark, deep, murderous things people do. they do them first because they're prideful and they lie to themselves and lie to God and lie to people. So I'm going to keep making videos on receiving the one sent to you and how powerful that is. Jesus said, if they receive you, they receive me and receive him who sent me. Maybe in our spiritual blindness and apathy and indifference, the people who we are looking down on are the ones sent from God to help us wake up, to take a look at the logs in our own eye of pride, lying, indifference, bitterness, unforgiveness. We can see maybe those people were sent to us to help us see some things. Maybe the souls we touch throughout our lives are actually to teach us something, not to be bitter, critical, and offended, finding fault, being unforgiving. That's the demise of the soul too. For when we really get saved from the downfall of our own soul, our defiled conscience, we will understand the powers of darkness and why people do what they do, so we won't live offended. This alone was Gene Sullivan's first prayer. Lord, show me why people do what they do so I won't be offended, so I'll be part of their solution and not part of their problem. If we fail in understanding the war of the flesh and the spirit in our own soul, we'll get stuck being a baby, a kid with bad attitudes, trying to pretend like we don't have them so we can get what we need. Especially, Ephesians 4 talks about the cunning craftiness of men, children. If you lie about the truth in your own cunning craftiness, you'll never understand the kid in you. You will not only fail in helping your own cunning, crafty kids, you'll never grow up to be your brother's keeper either, because you're not keeping yourself in the love of God. So, doesn't anybody with 2 kids want them to be their brother's keeper? God the Father does. He's no different. What is so powerful is meeting someone who understands this and has grown up to actually get the upside of Ephesians 4. Speak the truth in love. Stop stabbing yourself in the foot. Member each other so we can all be part of a growth hormone and turn into a living body of Christians, building each other up in our most holy faith by speaking the truth in love. This is the picture of bride activity, those being built up together, not alone, into the bride of Christ. If we don't put away childish thinking and acting and speaking, if we stick our heads in the sand about this one thing, we really will die like children, rebelling against growing up and making judgments to condemn others, not to help them. The clanging brass ministry. Children can judge other children, right, really well, but they don't know how to love very well, do they? That's why it says in the word, a broken and contrite heart will I not despise. Also, would you like to have a child that just gets really busy doing stuff and averts his God-given sorrow? Won't be sorry, but try to do a lot of other things instead. No, you want them to own what they are doing wrong, right? And get some understanding to it. True sorrow compels love and forgiveness from parents. It's just like going into a courtroom with a judge. Those that are really owning and are very sorry can get some compassion and mercy from that judge. The bull, S-H-I-T-E-R-S, the bulldungers, they don't get very far with the judge when they're trying to pull one over on them, saying they're sorry and they're actually not. So half-hearted attempts to drum up a hardly sorrowful heart don't go over too well with parents, doesn't go over well with God either. Basically, if you have children, you want them to be broken over what they do that hurts themselves and others around them. You want them to feel bad. And when it's sincere, you want to do everything you can to help them feel better and learn from their lessons, right? Hebrews 8:12 says, I will forgive their wickedness and I will remember their sins no more. This is an absolutely mind-blowing concept that God could not only forgive sin, but cleanse our guilty conscience. The humanistic response to knowing what to do and not doing it is, oh, you just shouldn't feel guilty. Guilt is just from the devil. Nobody should feel guilty. We're all just problem kids that should just take drugs and, we have diseases. Nobody's responsible for anything anymore, right? And then there's a don't feel guilty doctrine. Love yourself. Your narcissism is the best thing you got going for it. Go for it with all your heart. The love of self world, doesn't really get people anywhere either. And when you blow off all conviction or any kind of condemnation and you don't really feel guilty, that's going to be your demise too. Guilt is a gift from God. Our conscience is a gift from God to make us feel bad when we do what's wrong. In the same way that fear of fire is given to us when you put your hand on a burner, or fear of crashing if you do the wrong thing with a car, right? That conscience is a protector and a guide so that we might be led to the only answer for a guilty conscience. The remedy from Jesus is the only really one that can change anyone. It's in Ephesians 4:2. It talks about the knowledge of the Son of God unto a perfect man, unto the measure and stature of the fullness of Christ, that we henceforth be no more children tossed to and fro, carried about with every wind of doctrine by the sleight of men, the cunning craftiness, wherein by they lie in wait to deceive, but speaking the truth to one another in love, may grow up into him in all things, which is the head, even Christ. Let us draw near to God with a sincere heart and full assurance, having our hearts sprinkled to cleanse us from a guilty conscience, and walk in the light with people. Man, I heard a story about this Mormon couple. I'll have to tell that in my next conscience video. It was unbelievable. All the dead bodies in these people's past, and they felt really good about it. I'm going to talk more about that story too. It's a real story. I think even the lady involved in this horror path of destruction is being sentenced on Monday here 4 years later. But we can learn a lot. We can learn a lot from our own war of conscience. We can also learn a lot from people's failure or their rise in the understanding of their conscience. And that's why Jesus said, through one man's rebellion, many went to hell. Rebellion came on the earth when Adam and Eve ate Satan's words, right? So it also says through one man's righteous, many were made righteous. And even us staying on the straight and narrow path of trying to keep our conscience clean can affect a lot of lives for good. And I pray that's you. Amen.